Welcome to Class 4, Daily Jewish Living. Okay, this class is going to be kind of what a normal day looks like, if you want to call it that. That's going to be the topic. But I did promise you before we jump into that topic that I would finish up not living but death, or near death. My belief in the afterlife and my grappling with that. So I'll do that in short, but I told you that I worked as a chaplain in a hospice unit in the Bronx, and I spent a lot of time around and next to dead bodies that summer. So that made me ask a lot of questions about the afterlife. Because I would sit next to this one time. I was sitting next to this woman, and I got there in the morning. I actually wrote something up on this. Maybe I never published it. But so I got there this one morning, and like, Rabbi, they need you in the room. I'm like, okay, and I got in, and this woman her niece or something was there, and she had just passed away, and the woman wanted to pray with somebody. I says, okay, so I started to pray with her next to the dead body, and she was like a Jehovah's Witness. So the prayer was a little different than mine, but you find ways to pray together. But later on, when she left, I was sitting next to the body, and I started to think, where is, who are we praying for? Are we praying for her? Is she here? Is she not here? Does she hear us? And then we started asking these questions. And I started asking it many different situations I was in. This other woman I sat next to, and she was animated the night before. The next day, sadly, she wasn't there. And it made me really start thinking about it. So I know what I share with you from Jewish tradition, but I wanted to see what I felt about it. So I purchased a bunch of books on near-death experiences. And I guess that's where you start. So I'll tell you, I didn't come out so convinced. I thought it was appealing to me in the sense that there are like over 8 million or 10 million documented cases where people discuss near-death experiences. So that's a significant amount of people. But I didn't feel convinced for two reasons. One, because I'm not sure if a near-death experience, well, I'm sure about this. A near-death experience in my head isn't the same thing as a death experience. So I don't know if you can connect one to the other. So someone who went through a near-death experience, anybody who's been dead and has really met death, they've never come back to talk about it, I think. So for me, that was difficult to be convinced through that. And also, for myself, I believe if I went through an experience like that, I would be convinced. But I was listening to somebody else, I was less convinced through that. So I figured I had to start from myself. So I started from my own experiences and what I experience as out-of-body experiences. And I realized that for myself, I've experienced times when I felt kind of out of my body spiritually. There were times when I was living in Jerusalem and I would walk to the Kotel, the Wailing Wall, every night. I did like a 40-night period where I was going every day for 40 nights. And there were times I sit next to there and I just feel like my soul kind of elevating, almost out of my body. It was kind of creepy, but it was pretty powerful. And so that's like one example of that. Another one would be there were times in yeshiva when I was in seminary in yeshiva, and I would pray and sing after the meal. We'd stay together, we'd sing together, and we'd sing and sing and sing. And I'd get elevated to these places where I felt my soul almost out of my body. So for me, that was helpful in the sense that there could be the possibility of believing that the soul could exist outside of the body, or there is a spiritual realm outside of this physical realm. And so I kept reflecting, and I kept thinking a little bit more. Okay, I'll try to explain. I don't really understand it either, actually. But I didn't completely understand. These are my feelings, like what I believe through my experiences. But I don't have complete clarity on this. I have belief on this. I feel that it's true. I don't know if I can't prove it to anybody, but this is where I stand. So I started with near-death experiences that didn't work for me. My personal spiritual experiences, that worked better. And I started thinking on the ground, what do I do on the ground? Do I really believe on this? Do I really believe this in practice? And I do. Because I realized that when I say Kaddish for family members, I really believe that I was helping the souls. And when you say Kaddish, it's a prayer you say after somebody passes away. I believe I was helping the souls. And I remember in Israel, I used to visit graves of like holy people, tzaddikim they're called. And I used to believe that I was making some sort of connection. And I have also experienced like connection, like kind of spirit, those kind of like otherworldly connections in some capacity. Maybe that's for like another time. But so those three elements, the near-death experience, not so much. My personal experience and like my actions on the ground, they led me to understand that I believe in the possibility of an afterlife, or maybe I also believe in the afterlife. I can't say I know that it's true, but I Rabbi Yogav or Eli Yogav personally believe in it, and that's the direction through which I came to believe in it, to understand that I believe in it. So that's kind of like my own personal grappling with that. It helps that I also believe in the tradition, so that closes some of those gaps. But it's important, I think, as someone who's growing religiously, to try to find what you think and what you feel about things, amidst your belief in the truth of your tradition. I think it's important to do that grappling, because when you personally believe in something, you connect to it, you do it better, you live it better, and it's more authentic. So that's kind of like what I try to do in different areas too. It's important, to do it in a balanced way, because if you're always questioning every single thing, you might not be able to progress in your own spirit. It's sort of like a balance, but I still try to do that today with a lot of different things. Step outside and analyze. Okay, so here's what we're going to be doing today. Before we start, I wanted to review this sheet I handed out. There's 50 Jewish phrases. I put these together. Some of them I was told are a little yeshivish, which means they're kind of like connected to a yeshiva experience, like a Jewish seminary experience. So some of them all of them you hear in this synagogue. Not all of them will you hear in every synagogue. Conservative and Reform, you might not hear some of them, but still, a lot of them you will hear, and a lot of them are good to know anyway. So we're not going to go over all of them. We're going to go over 10 of them today that are connected to what we're going to talk about. Okay? What? Yeah. Are those still around here? Everyone, if you didn't get any, please. So feel free to go over them on your own. If you have any questions, you can shoot me an email about them, okay? But for now, we'll go over a few of them. I'll just read them with you. Number 4 is Beit HaKnesset. Okay? Literally, that means the house of gathering in Hebrew, and that's a word for synagogue. Okay? So that's how you're coming in. That's a word that's used in all, I would say, especially in Israel. But it's a good word to know, Beit HaKnesset. Another one is 6. Number 6 is bench or benching. Anybody know what that is? The bench? Yeah. So it's not to sit on a bench, although you do when you do it. It's a common misconception amongst me, maybe, when I first started. But benching means to recite the blessing after bread. It's the Birkat HaMazon. It's a blessing that we make after, it's from Yiddish, and it's a blessing you make after you eat bread at a meal. And let's go bench, everybody. We're gonna bench right now. And the Hebrew word for that blessing itself is Birkat HaMazon, the blessing over the food. Birkat is blessing, HaMazon, over the food. The main food that in Jewish tradition, the central food, is the staple is bread. That's why it's Birkat HaMazon. We're going to be talking about blessings today, so I wanted you to see those 2 blessings. Number 18, halacha. Okay, it's an important word. That's or halacha in Hebrew, or halacha, how they pronounce it. It's Jewish law. It literally means to walk, which is, I think, pretty beautiful, in that this is a path in life. It doesn't necessarily mean law. Chok is like a law. But in Hebrew, halacha is to walk. So it's from the root hey lamed kaf, which means and that's what. So if you're talking about, hey, what does the halacha say about this? What does Jewish law have to say about that? We're going to learn some laws today, so that's why I wanted you to know that word. Number 26. Lashon hara, or lashon hara, and that's the evil. It's literally means lashon is tongue, hara the evil tongue, and that's when people speak evil about each other. That's a no-no. Okay, and it's really. I was impressed when I first got to one of my seminary. I was in Israel. Every day we had 15 minutes right before. At 1:15 we prayed, we davened, you'll see that word. But at 1 o'clock we learned 15 minutes on the laws of evil speech and what to be careful of, because they wanted to cultivate rabbis who would be careful with their speech. I don't know how much it worked, but in any case. So that's Lashon Hara, and we're going to learn a little bit about that too. Number 32 is minhag. Okay, minhag. And that means custom. Nohag is like a custom. So it's not prescribed Jewish law, but rather customs that Jews have come to follow over time. And we're going to learn about that. The difference between a halacha, law, and a minhag, a custom. But you will hear this word. Don't go overboard with that. That's a minhag. That's a custom. So it's a good word to know. Okay, number 45 is a shiur. A shiur. That's a Torah class. Okay, so we're in a Torah class, so I wanted you to know about that. Number 46 is a shul. Okay, most people know that one. Shul is named for synagogue in Yiddish, so we're going to be talking about what goes on in shul today. So that's a word that's good to know. Like all denominations use that word. Okay. 47 tikkun olam. Okay, it literally means rectification, tikkun, olam, of the world, and it's really a broad concept, and it means it's an umbrella concept that means all types of means towards correcting or improving the world, and it kind of has been adopted or kind of been used a lot in, I guess, it's a lot of progressive circles. They're talking about a main idea of Judaism, which is correcting the world and being involved in social justice, and it's used. But it actually has a whole history to this term, but that's for another time. And lastly is 49, Yashar Koach. Who knows this one? Okay, good. So this is what this is what's used in, I guess, in Orthodox synagogues, maybe conservative, I don't know. But this is the kind when you give someone a pat on the back, go Yashar Koach. It means Yashar means straight, Koach power, and it means meaning a lot of power and strength to you, straight to you. Yashar straight to you. Koach is power, and it really means good job, congrats. So if you see someone go up to the Torah in synagogue, or they'll do something positive in synagogue, someone goes shkoyach, and that's kind of like a lazy way of saying Yashar Koach. Okay, so you'll hear that, and so you might hear that if you at least frequent this synagogue or other Orthodox synagogue. I believe they might say that in conservative synagogues. I don't know, but it's like they might say kol hakavod. That's another one that's here. It's similar to that. Okay, so those are some words, and I think this is like a nice sheet. Maybe we'll go over other ones on other gatherings, but this is some good words to know. Okay, so with that, I'd like to start our class. Okay, that was that. All right, here's what we're going to talk about today. We did this. Grab the Afterlife words to know. We're in that part now. We're going to talk about waking up in the morning. Okay, how are you supposed to wake up? What's the first thing you do in the morning? Then we're going to talk about blessings. We said Baruch Atah Hashem. We just got it. Hanukkah just finished. Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam Asher Kichad. Does that sound familiar to anybody? What are we saying? We're saying that. Like, what does it mean? Okay, we're going to try to understand that. And then we're going to really see that there's 3 categories of blessings. We're not going to get too deep into that because we don't have enough time. People have written lots of books on that, so we'll just touch on that in general. But I'm going to give you 2 or 3 interpretations of what we're saying when we say Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Haolam Hamotzi Lechem Min Haaretz. What do we say? Okay. After I was talking about the synagogue, I think some of you will appreciate this. This is going to be kind of a fun piece, I think. The blessings part we talk about God is focused on God. So some God talk there. Synagogue we're talking about Torah, and this part we're talking about humanity or people. So that'll be like the breakdown. Synagogue we're going to talk about talit, tefillin, and mezuzah. Okay, and we're going to talk a little bit about what their function is, what they're made of, and just lessons that we can take from them. And they're all connected to the synagogue, obviously. When you go to synagogue, you see people draped in their talis and their tefillin. I don't even know what these terms are. So if you don't, you will know, hopefully, by this class. Last thing is Jewish ethics. So these are things you do throughout the day. You have to be a good Jew. And so this is a work in progress. I'm trying to get together, distill the basics of Jewish ethics. That takes a long time, so you'll see my work in progress. I have 4 bullet points so far, with some other sources underneath there. It's a work in progress. And lastly is love your neighbor halachically. Okay, that's your new word, halacha, halachically. Okay, and halacha means how do you love your neighbor through the lens of Jewish law. And then we'll see visiting the sick, comforting the mourners, and things like that. That's going to be a kind of a day in the life of an observant Jew. So, any questions? Cool. You again? You have a question? Okay. So when I was a 18-year-old young man when I moved to Israel. Oh, I moved to Israel. I went there for a month and I ended up moving there. Eventually, I was there for several months in a row, and I stayed there for a year and kept going like that. But I went to seminary, and when I got to seminary, I wasn't used to getting up early. It was the summer, and all of a sudden, I heard when I woke up in the morning, I heard people. This one person banging on the doors, and they were singing this song. Modeh ani lefanecha, melech chai v'kayam. They would sing this throughout all the hallways, go 3 floors, bang on the doors. That's what they used to do. And really, the idea is this is what, according to Jewish law, this is the first thing someone says in the morning. Okay? A lot of traditional Orthodox Jews do this, including myself. You're supposed to do this even before people wash their hands in the morning. Just even before you wash your hands, you do this. So this is what you get out of bed. Modeh ani lefanecha, melech chai v'kayam, shechazarta bi nishmati b'chamla, rabbi emunatecha. That's like the first. This is how a Jew, according to the classic codes of Jewish law, that's how a Jew starts the day. And if you pay attention to the words, it's a really positive message, positive way to start the day. I offer thanks to you, living and eternal King, for you have mercifully restored my soul within me. Your faithfulness is great. And so the first word you say of the day is modeh. Thank you. And now, if you whatever your concept is of God, this idea of being grateful and having gratitude, I think it's even scientifically it's proven that there's positive effects of this. People have gratitude journals. You can believe in God or not, even to carry that out. But the idea is that we want to start on a positive note to offer thanks to God and be thankful for all that we have. And the most important thing that we have to have thanks for is that we're alive. Right? I mean, that's the most basic. I don't think it's the most important. That's the most basic thing. And all of us have that. And so we start from there, and hopefully it'll continue afterwards. That's the basic thing. I'm breathing. I'm alive. My soul is restored. Now I can also think of all the other things that I have. And so that's kind of how you start the day. And I just wanted to point out this word modeh. And there's actually a new popular song that's out. Maybe I'll link to it. A popular song in Orthodox circles. But it's like popular amongst me and my 3 friends. But it's I really like the song. I don't know about that. Anyway, but it gets in your head and it keeps going. So, yeah, this idea of modeh ani, there is a song that's on the radio in Israel, and I'll link to it in the folder if you're interested. And a lot of them are spin-offs of this song, of this prayer. This prayer is composed in, at least first appeared in the prayer books in 1695, and so it's kind of like an older prayer, and it has some verses in it. I just wanted to point out 3 parts of this prayer, and this will also be the structure of our class. Okay, it works out. I'd say 75% almost 100% works out nicely. Okay, first part is offer thanks. So we're going to first talk about blessings, offer thanks to God. Then we're going to talk about spiritual things, the synagogue, restore my soul. And then we're going to talk about faithfulness, being a faithful person to other people. And so that's going to be like our structure kind of fits nicely into that prayer. So I just wanted you to see that prayer. And I wanted to point out one more thing. Modeh, the word modeh, thanks. The name for a Jew in Hebrew is Yehudi. Okay, that is from that same root of modeh, giving thanks. That's a really central thing to Judaism, giving thanks, being grateful for what we have, and not taking it for granted. Even to the point that our name Yehudi, is based on that idea of modeh, hoda'ah. That's a very powerful thing. Okay. So now we're on to the topic of blessings. Okay? Blessings are, anybody who's doing conversion or interested in doing a more excelled conversion class, you will come across a lot of minutia in this area. There's all kinds of blessings, and which blessings do you make first? And what if you have a blessing over 2 things that have the same blessing? What do you do? There's a lot of we're not doing that, okay? Don't worry. Maybe at another time, but we're not doing that. we're going to keep it really simple, okay? We're just going to try to understand, what are we saying? We say Baruch. So here's a blessing, okay? Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Any people have heard that blessing before?
Yes.
Okay. That's the blessing over bread. Yes. So the translation to that is, so I on purpose did not put blessed, okay? Because there are two ways to understand that first word, Baruch. Baruch are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who brings forth bread from the earth. Okay, so basically what we're saying is, you are Baruch, whatever that could be, blessed. You are blessed, God. You're our King, the King of the universe, recognizing that you're in charge of everything. And then you're recognizing God for bringing bread from the earth. And so the idea is that before one eats, one wants to recognize the source of what they're eating. It's kind of connected to the idea of giving thanks and praise. And so, there are a lot of Jewish people like to eat food. Okay, everyone likes to eat food, but we like to eat food. And so you will see if you're a more traditional Orthodox people, that they're doing this a lot before they eat. Ever seen them? So it's kind of like what is that? That is a Jew who's learned all the blessings, and now they're so familiar with them that it becomes like kind of like an automatic whisper, and they're not even kind of paying attention to what they're saying. I'm guilty of that too. But really, the idea is that there are a lot of items, and according to the basic Jewish law is you're really supposed to make a blessing over it before you eat them. And the idea is you're supposed to recognize that everything has its source. Now, what do you say when you make this blessing? What do we say? One way to understand it is, blessed are you, Lord our God. So people have trouble with this. Why? That's how it's usually understood, right? When you read this, you hear it saying, the problem with this is, does God need our blessings? Right? It's like, God bless you. Well, you can't say it to God. That's God. God bless God. No, you won't say that, right? So, why are you blessing God? God doesn't need our blessings. So what's the purpose of saying, blessed are you, O Lord our God? So, what?
Acknowledgement.
So, okay.
You're like acknowledging that God provided it all, because we're not going to be the brains and everything.
So you'll tell me, we'll try to figure out which of these interpretations that works into. If we work into both of them. First understanding is, I think everybody says it's not we're actually blessing God, because God doesn't need our blessing. But rather we're saying, we are blessing God, we're basically giving our thanks and appreciation. Like, it's not that God needs the blessing. You're saying, here, take these blessings. You deserve all the blessings, the praise, all that. So it's kind of like, that's the blessed are you, the first interpretation. But the more common interpretation, it's interesting, people don't know this, is that when you're saying Baruch, you are basically acknowledging that God is the source of blessing. This word Baruch is a description. And so you're basically saying, the source of blessing are you, Lord our God, who brings forth bread from the earth. You're basically acknowledging God as a source of blessing. Instead of saying you're blessed, you're acknowledging God as the source of blessing. So it's a little bit different. You're not talking to God per se, but you're acknowledging God. You're saying, I acknowledge that you're the source of blessing, and kind of those are the two interpretations for it. But it's important to know what we're saying when we're saying it. Now, they're a little bit different. One is that you're sending your praise to God. The other one is you're acknowledging the source. Now, we'll do this really quickly, but there are three categories of blessings. When you make your blessing over your Hanukkah, okay, you're on Hanukkah. So when you light your Chanukiah, that blessing is called a blessing. That first blessing you made, Asher Kiddishanu Mitzvotav, whenever you say that, that's in the first category. Blessings of mitzvahs. Okay? And so when Jews perform different mitzvahs, they make a blessing over that mitzvah before they do it. And so we'll have that when we take a lulav, Baruch atah Hashem, Asher Kiddishanu Mitzvotav, al netilat lulav. When you're washing your hands. Asher Kiddishanu Mitzvotav, al netilat yadayim. Whenever we do a mitzvah, we try to make a blessing over it. And the reason behind this is that we want to recognize that we're doing a mitzvah right now. So let's say it's Rosh Hashanah and you happen to find a horn on the ground, okay? And you blow it. So you just blow it randomly. You didn't know about any of the laws of shofar. Did you do the mitzvah? There's discussions about that in the Talmud, and the idea is that we want to recognize before we do the act that we're actually doing a mitzvah right now. Once you put it in the category of a mitzvah, and it's not just another act, then we like turn on the mitzvah game. And so that's why we make the blessing over the mitzvah. We want to kind of say we're about to start a mitzvah right now. There are two other types of blessings. One is the blessings of enjoyment. And so when you're going to try to enjoy a fruit or candy or bread, like you say, that's a blessing of enjoyment. You make that blessing before you eat the food item. And when you make that blessing, whatever the appropriate blessing is, and then you enjoy it. And lastly, there's blessings of praise. This is one of them. The blessings of praise, there are so many of them. There are maybe like 50 or, I don't know, there are a lot of them. And there are blessings over all kinds of like wonders of nature that you can kind of just praise God for, or if you want to interpret that differently, or express your gratitude for. Just be grateful and amazement over these wonderful things of nature. Take a moment, reflect on them. I really appreciate these prayers. There's one over wearing new clothes, smelling fragrant trees, smelling fragrant herbs. There's one on the rainbow. There's one on lightning and thunder. And so, I don't know, the idea is that we're supposed to cultivate appreciation and amazement and not just like kind of walk through life and not recognize the beauty of nature and the beauty of the world. And so that's kind of like these blessings of praise could be blessings of amazement. You could define it like that, yeah.
Is it like hard or soft wall to say any blessings for nature?
So it's depends who you ask. You're asking, like you're reading an Orthodox book of law, that would be law. Yeah, like people do that, yeah. When I'm in my room and I hear thunder, I'll say a blessing over that. And lightning. Sometimes I have good intentions, sometimes I just say it. When I do have the intention, it feels good, okay?
It's a bad storm, or are you just saying over and over, or is it just
it's like I'm hiding underneath my bed. I'm like, yeah, but
Doesn't it say, Shulchan, that if you hear it once and it's in the same storm,
Yeah.
you can say it's thunder?
yeah, exactly. You're not supposed to do it. It's like a
But
certain time
if it's
period.
a different storm.
If it exactly, that's your answer. If it's the same storm, you don't keep saying it. If there's like multiple, if it's if there's a certain amount of time passed between the storms, it's the same thing with this blessing. I'm not going to go too deep into this, but this is a blessing that one makes after they go to the bathroom. Okay, so when I first became observant, I went out. My mother came to visit me in Israel, and we were in seminary. We're making this blessing all the time because we do that 3 times a day, and then I came. She took me out to a restaurant, and then I came to the table, and she starts talking to me. She said, "I'm making this blessing," because I came out of the bathroom, and she was like, "What are you doing? Like, are you talking to me?" I was like, "No." I was like, "I'm making the blessing." So I finished the blessing. She's like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "I'm making a blessing after the bench." She's like, "Are you serious, Eli?" So whatever. But there is a blessing after going to the bathroom, and it's powerful. It's also, you got a king universally fashioned man with wisdom and created within many openings and cavities. It is obvious and known before your throne of glory that if but one of them were to be ruptured or but one of them were to be blocked, it would be impossible to survive and to stand before you. Bless you, who heals all flesh and acts wonders. So that's a blessing that.
What category would that be?
What? That's the category. That's praise.
Praise.
Yeah.
Great, good. So I was gonna, if this was like my high school class, I would like take like 50 different pictures of things or emojis or whatever, and put them in the category. That's a game, but we're not doing it. Okay. So with that, we finished the blessing. Yeah. I don't, but that's interesting. That's interesting. It's just
You made me think of it. I never thought about it.
there's a blessing shechiana, which is a blessing of praise, and that's a blessing you make over new things. So traditionally, I mean, I haven't heard you make it over snow, but it's worth thinking about. Okay, what? Less what? Okay. So we finished blessings. Okay. Now what I want to do is I want to go over 3 different elements. I want to go over 3 different parts of the synagogue experience. Okay. This will be more like trying to understand the customs, what's behind them, and why do we do it. Okay. So the first one is tzitzit or tzitzis or talis. Okay. And it really I should have put talit, but. This is, I'll show you what it is. I don't know what it is, but it's a prayer shawl. Okay. And this is a rather big one. In Orthodox communities, we're careful to take really big ones because we want to cover our whole body with them. This is the photo op. And so, you drape it over yourself. There's a certain blessing. You make a blessing over the mitzvah. Okay? And I'm just going to wear it now so I can just discuss it. Okay? Now, the question is, there's two things. First off, there are different customs in different denominations as to who wears a talis. Okay? Denominations to the left of Orthodoxy, women wear talises. In Orthodoxy, some progressive groups, women do. In our synagogue, there are some women who wear a talis. There was a woman who wore a talis last year. But no one wears it really in the main sanctuary. But more mainstream Orthodox communities, women don't wear talises. And that's a long discussion we're going to have when we talk about Jewish law and women and men. And we're going to talk about that later in the program too. But for now, I'm just going to kind of focus in on the mitzvah itself, and we will talk about that. Okay. So what I want to focus on now is just what the purpose of this garment is, what the purpose of this mitzvah is. I'm just curious what your thoughts are. Do you have any thoughts on this? Why would I be wearing this, and what would the efficacy of this be? How would this
sort of remind you of the obligation for the observance? Kind of making sure to remind you of the law covenant that you were looking to follow.
How does it do that?
It just works as just as a reminder.
So these strings, the strings or the shawl?
The whole thing. Strings, the knots.
Any other thoughts on that?
Is that the same as tzitzit?
Yeah, okay, so these strings are called tzitzit. 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 Yeah, so...
It's a 613.
Yeah.
And I'm supposed to wear them.
Yeah. So these are called tzitzit. The strings are called tzitzit. The garb is called a talit. And sometimes the whole thing is called tzitzit, or the whole thing is called talit. But these strings are hang out from it, and really there is the classic explanation for it, and there's an explanation that I find extremely convincing, and it's a historical explanation. I want to provide that to you today. This is one of the places where the discussion of the fringes on these fringes, the tzitzit, is discussed in the Torah, and we read this part of the Shema blessing. And it says, the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, speak to the children of Israel, to say to them that they should make for themselves fringes on the corner of their garments, throughout their generations. And they shall affix a thread of sky blue wool on the fringe of each corner. This shall be fringes for you. And when you see it, you will remember all the commandments of the Lord to perform them. And you shall not wander after your hearts and after your eyes, after which you are going astray. So that you will remember and perform all my commandments, you shall be holy to your God. And so, this is kind of similar to what you said. This is the example. This is the explanation usually brought when these tassels, these fringes, are supposed to remind you of the commandments. And the question is, how does that exactly happen? These don't look like I don't know. They don't look like commandments. They look like strings to me. Yeah. That's exactly. So that's an explanation. That's the explanation. That's the classic explanation. It's kind of like tying a ring around your finger. These are supposed to go with you to all four corners. So it reminds you constantly of doing the right thing in all corners of the earth, in all areas that you're going to go. And there's a story in the Talmud, and there's actually two stories there's a story about this is not a it's like a PG-13 story, but there's a story about this rabbi and a prostitute in the Talmud, and there's two stories like that. And this story goes like he went to go visit her, and he was wearing a talis, and he paid all of the money, and he went and he traveled really far distance, and this and that. And the moment he was about to be together, his talit hit him in the face. I guess he was like changing. He's like, and all of a sudden it reminded him, to not fall prey to his negative behaviors, negative desires. And so that's one example of how the talit is supposed to help you or help remind you of the commandments. Yeah.
Was he married?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe he was. I don't know. All right. Let's look into that. So that's one way that's offered. There are two more, and the second and third I connect to a little bit more, because I'll just tell you, I don't walk with this most of the day. And it's not hitting me most of the day. I do go with what's called a talit katan, one underneath my clothing, but I don't see it all the day. So that's not as, I don't find that as powerful for me. This was when I came across this explanation, it opened up my eyes, and I don't think most people know about this in the Orthodox world. This is from an academic article, and he explained that these are pictures from like ancient civilizations around in biblical times. They found them on like paintings, and people used to go with hems, fancy hemmings, and tassels hanging from their clothing. And this was kind of like a sign. The more fancy hemming that you had, it showed that you had more money, and that you were more like of a noble class. And so the same thing with the tassels. The tassels kind of like a continuation of this decoration. And so he wanted to argue. This is Milgram. You wrote an article on this, and he I forget his first name. He wanted to argue what?
Stanley Milgram?
No, actually no. Jacob Milgram. I'll put the article in the folder, in the online folder. He wanted to argue that the Jewish version, the talis is a Jewish version of this. It's basically saying you're a kingdom of priests. Okay, remember that. And when you wear this, I want you to know that, but don't just wear the hems and the fancy tassels that the nobles wear. Take it up another level and put a blue fringe on it. Blue wool fringe on each corner. And the blue fringe is supposed to remind you of the heavens. And so, on one hand, we are a kingdom. We're nobility. On the other hand, we're priests. And the Torah says we're a kingdom of priests. On the other hand, we want to use our power and our grandeur, but also do it in connecting to spirituality and religious values. So I thought that's like a powerful piece there. It's kind of connecting it to its historical context. So I find that powerful. Another thing I find powerful, just from my own personal, this is the third explanation, is you could try this. I really appreciate when I'm in synagogue and I'm like enveloped in my talit. I do feel like I'm surrounded by something, and when I cover my whole body with it, it kind of forms kind of like a spiritual cocoon or something, and it can be a very powerful and powerful spiritual experience. So for me, being surrounded by this garment and by what's traditionally understood as kind of representing the mitzvot, for me that it helps elevate me spiritually. So that's like from my own personal experience how I experience it. Yeah.
I see that in shul, just different people. I didn't know if it was something specific or was just
over one's head.
Yeah, one's personal.
So over one's.
About how they
It's just for concentration, and I find it helps me concentrate and gets me in a zone. Yeah, when someone prays in their home, it's not just in the meeting. When someone prays the morning prayer, they'll put this on. They'll wear the talis and also put on tefillin. There's a few things on this. Number one, this garment, they're all can be made from any color you want. I've seen all kinds of really nice decorations. All denominations are okay with that.
The sky blue shirt.
So I'm not talking about the strings.
No, I'm just saying that that's the biggest touch
Oh,
of
the
why you
Korah.
wear white and the sky blue shirt is the wear
Yeah. So we're going to maybe touch on that a little bit. Another thing is some people. So there are different customs of how to tie the strings. We're not going to go into that so much. I'm just going to show you a picture of that. Okay, this is a picture of. And there's a whole discussion of if we should be wearing the blue today or not. I'm not going into that. It's a big discussion. Okay? If we really have you're supposed to take blue from some sort of snail. If we have the snail, I'm not going into that, okay? Anyway, but here are a few examples of how to tie it with the blue. There are different customs. And most talitot and Ashkenazi communities are tied this way. If they're tied in a traditional manner. And these adds up, if you do the math, to 39, and that means something also. Not getting so much into that because I want to kind of keep moving, but there's a lot to say on this. But those are three different ways to understand it. One is that it's supposed to be like a reminder to wherever you go. Another one is that it's supposed to remind you that we are supposed to be a kingdom of priests. That on one hand we're like we have nice clothing, we have these tassels, etc. But on the other hand, they have blue in them to remind us of the heavens. And the other one is that you envelop yourself in the mitzvah and you kind of experience it in a spiritual way.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Aren't you supposed to be buried in it?
Yeah, people are buried in it actually, but they actually take off. They are buried in it. Yeah.
Do you see one anymore?
That's a good question. So, it depends on the community. In Sparta communities, Middle Eastern countries, people in Middle Eastern countries, they do wear it, single men. In Ashkenazi communities, single men don't. I was talking about just an Orthodox community. I don't know what happens so much in conservative or Reform. So here we are. Tefillin. Okay, we did a little bit. We're just touching on these things. You can give a whole year of classes on each of these topics. So if you feel like, I understand a little bit, but I have a lot more questions, that's okay. So we can fold these. You'll see, if you ever see, if you're in a synagogue, you see people not folding them. It's not necessarily because they're lazy. Seriously. On the Sabbath, there's like some laws that you're not supposed to fold clothing. So, I mean, it helps when you're lazy. It's like a nice law because then you don't have to fold it. But today's not the Sabbath. Okay. All right. So tefillin. Tefillin. I brought my tefillin with me. I have a little video here of how tefillin are made. It's a 3.5 minute video. So you're going to see a little bit of how they're made in 3.5 minutes. Okay. But before that, it says, I don't struggle with understanding the purpose of tefillin, actually. Okay, maybe I'll put it. I don't struggle with understanding the purpose of tefillin because I do struggle. I was struggling for years until I found some of those explanations for tzitzit, for the talis. But for tefillin, it's pretty straightforward to me. I'm going to ask you what you think might be the purpose of this. In the tefillin, there are parchments. Okay, there are parchments, and we're going to see what they are. In the hand, there are 4 passages in the hand tefillin. This is the hand tefillin, and there are 4 passages in the head tefillin. And each of those passages are passages from the Bible which discuss tefillin. Okay? One of them discusses Egypt, the Exodus from Egypt. Another one discusses the firstborn. And there's another one, the other 2 are from the Shema. And so, really what you're putting on your hand and your head, you're putting parchments which discuss tefillin and discuss concepts of unity. So what I'm doing right now is I'm fastening it here. Traditionally, we tie it 7, we roll it, we wrap it 7 times around the hand. There are reasons for that. We're not going to go into that so much now. And you put on the hand and the head. And in these parchments, the discussions, the head tefillin are supposed to be between your eyes. It actually says here, between your eyes. Between your eyes. Okay, so between my eyes. And then there are different customs as to how you wrap it. We're not going to go into that so much either. But I'm wrapping a certain way, but there are different traditions in how you wrap it around your hand. But everyone does these 7 ones and puts it between their eyes. And so, in these parchments, there's discussions of the unity of God taking care of the Jewish people. So those are some of the things that are discussed in these parchments. What would your thinking? Why would a religious community be doing this? How would this be helpful? What? What does it mean? Okay. Any thought? You can just offer your own reflections on this.
It's your connection with Torah, God, yourself, and skin contact provides that connection. And it's the same idea we talked earlier about how it's a symbolic remembrance and symbolism.
Any other thoughts on that?
Could it be the parchments that, like it's a literal interpretation of that there's the portions between the eyes and also the arm. So it's a literal interpretation. You have to script of it in box stones.
Yeah, for sure. So this is what the verse says on it. The verse says, this is from the Shema, okay? This is the Shema blessing. I think, did we discuss that last class? A little bit? The Shema, maybe in the first class? The Shema blessing is a central blessing. That's the prayer. That's the Shema blessing. These are the words that one reads when one reads the Shema blessing, which is the central blessing. It says, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your means. And these words which I command you this day shall be upon your heart. And you shall teach them to your sons, speak them where you sit in your house, when you walk in the way, when you lie down, when you rise up. And you shall bind them for a sign upon your hand. That's this. And for ornaments between your eyes. And that's that. So the verse really speaks about that. And the question is, how do I know that means this? These strands, and these straps, and the boxes doesn't talk about that per se. It says a sign upon your hand. Someone could put a sign on their hand. They could write a sign on their hand. So there are oral traditions connected to this that are passed on from generation to generation, and some were elaborated upon in like later books. But this is kind of like how the tradition understands these verses. And then the last piece is you should inscribe them upon the doorposts of your house and upon your gates. That's the mitzvah of mezuzah. Okay, so that's the last thing we're going to talk about. So let's see a little bit about the tefillin and how it's made. Oops. I'm going to leave all these up here. You can look at them afterwards.
When a boy becomes bar mitzvah, he is obligated to observe the commandments of the Torah. The unique symbol of Jewish adulthood is tefillin, the special boxes worn on the arm and head during prayer. Inside each tefillin box are parchments containing 4 Torah sections, which speak of our obligation to remember the Exodus and to fulfill the commandments of the Torah. There are many detailed laws regarding the parchments. The verses are written with special black ink on the hide of a kosher animal. The parchments must be written by an ordained, God-fearing scribe. Each section must be written in the exact order as it appears in the Torah. Here we are at Oter Yisrael Tefillin Factory in Jerusalem, where every parchment is triple-checked for accuracy, first by the scribe himself. If a mistake is caught, it is fixed. This ensures that the tradition is passed along from generation to generation with perfect accuracy. The scroll is then checked again by a trained proofreader. He compares the scroll to the text that is printed in the Bible. A final check is then done using computer scanning software. This detects if a letter is omitted, or even if 2 letters are touching one another.
So 2 letters can't touch each other. If you ever pay attention to a Sefer Torah, letters cannot touch each other. If they do, they have to fix it. So that's one of the basic laws.
The boxes are made using a special hydraulic press. The pressure is used to form the thick leather into the proper shape of tefillin. It takes up to a full year to move the hide through the various stages of production.
They skipped over that in this video. But
no glue is used in this process. These carefully calibrated machines exert an extreme pressure that produces perfectly square tefillin. The head tefillin contains the Hebrew letter Shin, which is embossed in relief on the outside of the box. The arm tefillin contains 1 parchment, whereas the head tefillin is 4 parchments, each in its own separate compartment. Pressing a flat piece of leather into 4 compartments is no easy task. The boxes must be perfectly square in shape. Each box is repeatedly measured with a digital micrometer. Next, the parchments are rolled up. They are then tied with the hair of a kosher animal. The parchments are then inserted into the box. and the box is sewn closed with the sinew of a kosher animal. And they are checked carefully once again. Then the boxes are painted totally black. Approximately 15 layers of paint are used over a period of weeks to allow the paint to be completely absorbed into the leather. To be kosher for use, the tefillin must be produced to exacting standards. Therefore, one should purchase tefillin only from
From
a
our
dependable, God-fearing.
That's why mine was so fun.
Yeah, they can run really expensive. So you might want to ask me, hey, Rabbi Yoga, you're a vegan. Why are you wearing these animal products? So these actually are used tefillin. So that's how some vegan religious people will work around that. They'll get hand-me-downs. Okay. Any case, but so I don't have trouble understanding the purpose of this. It just makes sense to me that you want to tie messages, important messages, as close. People wear like sports uniforms. People wear things on their body they think are really important. They get tattoos of things they think are important. So it makes sense to me. You want to put on your head things that are important. You want to put next on your arm, where your actions are done, and on your heart, next to your heart. You're going to put as close to you as possible all these messages. So I don't. For me, it kind of makes sense. No, so you always strap on the opposite hand, and the idea is that you want to like assert your more dominant hand and kind of like subjugate the weaker one to like positive things. You want to subjugate your actions to positive behavior.
3,000 years ago, they didn't have
All the
machinery that they show.
Yeah.
What did they do then?
That's a good question. I'll get back to you on that. it's another video. Okay. They found all kinds of relics and tefillin from like the Dead Sea, like the Dead Sea Scrolls. They found, I don't know how far back the tefillin they found, but most of them are boxed. They're not perfectly box shaped, but they have, with the scrolls inside they found, goes back thousands of years. So it's worth seeing how far back it goes. All right, so let's do mezuzah really quickly. So mezuzah. The mezuzah, as we saw in the verse, it says you should have mezuzah on your houses. One understanding of the mezuzah is that it's there to protect the house. Okay, there is kind of like a mythical understanding of it, or not mythical, more like a magical one, that it's kind of like an amulet. That's one way it was understood traditionally, and some people still understand it that way. It's there, it protects your house. That's sort of like spiritual power to it. I think a more rational way to understand it is that as you walk in your house, you want to have that as your message. This is a house of holiness. This is a house of where we do good things. We're going to be kind to each other. And every time you walk in, you remember that. That's the message. That's the energy you want to set as you walk into your house and as you walk out into the world. And it's kind of like a reminder. And that's why you have a mezuzah on your doors, kind of remind you and help focus you in on what you want to be doing in your home. Because the Jewish home is a really important place where you cultivate where you spread Jewish values to your family. Now, the mezuzah oftentimes you'll see it is on a slant, right? So there are no mystical reasons for that. There's a very simple explanation for this. Okay, there's a disagreement amongst authorities in the medieval period whether you should put the mezuzah straight or whether you should put it horizontal. Right? Rashi says straight. Rabbeinu Tam, his grandson, says horizontal. So, compromise. Let's put it diagonally. And that's why we do that, okay? Now, Sephardic communities, they go by Rashi, straight. And so you'll see that. But the reason why it's sideways, horizontal, is really, diagonal is for that reason. Now, what's inside of it, we'll see in a second. You can, according to all denominations, you can make the bayit, the casing for the scroll, from whatever you want. And this is a case where people made the case to buy it from the glass that was broken at the wedding. There's a custom like that, which is nice. And so I've seen people like collect the glass and stuff like that and try to and they'll make you new things from it. And it's good to do as many beautiful things as possible when you're doing these things. It's only a positive thing. Now, so those are two explanations I offer that can guard you, or I think it's more like a reminder of the way you want to be inside and outside your home. It's supposed to be fastened very tightly, and there are a lot of false mezuzahs out there, and I can attest to this because my mother gave me a mezuzah, and the mezuzah was false. Okay, she didn't know. They sold it to her, and so it was a false mezuzah. It was just, she didn't check on the inside what was in there, but it was just kind of like a regular printer paper, and they just printed on this writing. But for it to be like a kosher mezuzah according to all standards, it should be written on a what's considered a cloth, which is like animal hide, and it's written with by a scribe, and none of the letters can touch each other with a certain ink and none of the letters can touch each other, the same way we saw with the tefillin. And this is what's inside of it. It's really the Shema. It's the Shema. So I had this little project I did with preschool kids where they came to my class and they went around the school and they looked at all the mezuzahs around the school. And the teacher built up the suspense. He said, well, what's inside the mezuzah? You want to know what's inside? Rabbi Yoga's going to tell you what's inside. You have to wait. So they came. It was like a day or two, and then they eventually came. It's like, I don't know what's inside. It's the Shema. Because they knew the Shema. It was like kind of like a fun moment. And the Shema really, again, the Shema is the idea that I explain as like God loves them, that God's always with them. And so it's a powerful idea. When you walk in your home, when you walk out of your home, you want to bring godliness into your home. You want to bring godliness into the world. And that's really the idea that the Shema's are inside of it. There are two parts of the Shema that are in, because these two parts contain the description of the mezuzah and the laws of what you have to do. You have to have a mezuzah.
But don't you never take them when you leave, you just leave them there.
Yeah, yes. If you are moving out and there's like another Jew living there, you're supposed to leave the mezuzahs. If you have very expensive ones, you can replace them with not less expensive ones. You didn't know that, did you?
No.
Okay. Someone lucked out.
But if you know your son, your house, your door, then you don't have to.
You
Oh,
know you
yes,
don't.
you do. You do?
For a non-Jew, you don't have that.
Oh, so you can take the mezuzah out, you know, like ways to live.
Yeah, or not. Yeah, a non-Jew. So, two or three other laws. Number one is it should be fastened very tightly. Okay, some people have like these Velcro. That's like,
I know.
yeah. So it's good to fasten it tightly. Okay. Some people do it with glue. That's fine. And also, it's supposed to be on the top third of your door.
It's where you gotta check.
So let's say you're going into the old city, Jaffa Gate. You walk in. There's a mezuzah. How's that work? That gate, that doorpost is really high. So if it's very high, it's just to be in hand, so you can access it with your hand. But for the most part, top 2/3. And another thing is it's supposed to be in rooms in which you live. So most people put it only on their front doors, but more traditional communities will put it on all their doors, really nice. And but not in the bathroom. That's not like a respectable place to put it, and not in rooms that are not livable rooms. So it's really interesting. You're really not obligated to have a mezuzah in the shul, unless you're like one of the BT rabbis who actually kind of live here. But otherwise, you're not really supposed to have. You don't have to have one, because it's only a place where you live. And so that's actually an interesting law. But everybody does. But if you don't, it's nice to have it.
But don't they say too, you should occasionally check the ones that are
Yeah, again, so that's...
they don't get water or anything in.
Yeah, you're supposed to check your mezuzahs like once every 7 years, I think. And some people, again, back to the magical explanation of it, they'll say, if something's going wrong in people's life, people are like, check your mezuzahs. And that's just like a euphemism, but it's more like, check your mezuzahs, like, go check them. So they think that maybe the mezuzahs are off. Again, you can believe in that or not, but that is sometimes said. So that's kind of like the magical explanation. But if you just go by more like the rational one, which I offer, I I think that's a positive way to go. So those are three different customs. We're kind of at a time. So we'll figure out what to do with the Jewish ethics. We'll find a way to incorporate that. But I guess I wanted to just expose you to a little bit of some customs, some what the blessings are, the categories of blessings, the modeh ani, and maybe and some basic Jewish terms that kind of connect to all that. So hopefully that was somewhat enlightening. If you need more information, you can feel free to reach out to me, and I'll post the different things that I mentioned here that we're going to put in the folder. That'll be in the folder. You get that tomorrow.